Welcome, everybody. I would like to call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency for Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. And the first order of business is privilege of the floor. I have a written statement and a speaker. I'd have our speaker come up first. Teresa Alt, if you'd like to come to the microphone.
Hello, I'm Teresa Alt of 206 Eddy Street in the city of Ithaca, and today I'm going to address the IDA work plan for next year. The work plan mentions 160 new housing units, of which 37 will be affordable. From the rest of your documents, I suspect that they will be in Southworks. When you consider what a huge problem low-income housing and workforce housing, and that hits businesses, is in this community, 37 units is pathetically little. Moreover, here's where I think they come from. When the Vecino Company first proposed Asteri to be entirely affordable, they proposed 218 units. Now, Dave Lubin, with IDA subsidy, had built Herald Square, erecting its south face as far south as he could legally go. But then, Vecino proposed filling their property as full as they legally could go, starting just south of Herald Square. Lubin sued Vecino, the affordable builder. The end deal was that Vecino backed off, sacrificed 37 apartments. Lubin promised to let Vecino build those 37 and maybe more at Chainworks. But then Lubin sold Chainworks. I hope the deal is still in place with the new owners. You seem to think so. I worry. It's still a shame. Asteri is close to being finished. Southworks is still in the future. People need homes now. I have said before that your job is to create good jobs. I challenge you to create jobs that pay enough to afford the apartments that you have been subsidizing in downtown Ithaca.
Thank you. And then Peter Wissaker submitted a comment, which I will read into the record. Let's see, my apologies for not being there in person. I have a meeting that conflicts with this one. Please read my comments aloud in case members of the board haven't had a chance to peruse them. Carrowmore Solar. Needless to say, I'm glad to see a solar project come before you, especially one that pays the prevailing wage and intends to hire 75% local labor. Ideally, when NexAmp hires consultants or contractors to service the site once it's up and running, they will be local as well. That might be something you could request. Given the county's desire to increase the number of people employed in green industries, it's a shame that the company isn't planning on working with firms that offer a certified apprentice program. It is a perfect opportunity to give some hands-on experience to younger people who want to make the transition to green jobs. NexAmp is requesting a pilot as well as a sales tax benefit of $432,964. Parens for a $11,831,794.60 project, end parens. The sales tax benefit comprises just 3.66% of the total cost of the project. And while it is a relatively small part of the project's total cost, it is an amount that would be much more meaningful to our local communities, particularly at a time when the town of Ithaca has just lost Cornell funding for its contribution to the City of Ithaca Fire Department. And, as always, the school district and the county are short of money, not to mention the lack of funds for the new EMT program. The application notes NexAmp is the largest asset holder of community solar projects in New York State. But what it doesn't say is that NexAmp is a subsidiary of Mitsubishi In other words, it has more than sufficient access to capital, and it doesn't need the tax break. Honestly, I'm fine with the pilot, but I ask you to reject their request regarding sales taxes. And let's not forget they already have a NYSERDA grant worth almost $1.25 million. The company has enough invested in the project that they are not going to walk away over such a small piece of the total costs. Please say no to their request for a break on the sales taxes. And then IAED work plan. Overall, the IAED work plan looks great. Congratulations on doing a really good job. The focused attention to job creation and industry attraction is admirable. By now, you won't be surprised that I have concerns about the real estate section. Maybe it's time to remove real estate development from the agency's core mission, or replace it with supporting the development of middle and low-income housing. Similarly, I would ask that on page 6, in the community benefits section, you substitute 800 new housing units that are affordable to households earning less than $100,000 a year, or something along those lines for 800 new housing units. The agency must get out of the market rate housing business, and this is the time to do it. We've already seen that adding more top-of-the-market apartments has not lowered the rents in the county. The top-down approach doesn't work. Please leave it in the past and move on. Finally, by any chance, did you pursue my suggestion regarding Conifer's parent company? As a reminder, I urge you to insist that half the tax break for Conifer's senior housing development be contingent on a matching investment from their parent company, which would be used to remodel the apartments there. I assume the idea went nowhere beyond the walls of Ithaca Town Hall in the minutes of the public hearing. But I urge you to leverage requests for tax breaks in cases like this. It can help someone like our local Conifer Apartment Management gain increased financial support from their parent company. It would be a way to serve both the local division of national or international companies and the residents of our community. Thank you for your time. As always, I'm available to discuss any of these issues. You can reach me at wissaker@lightlink.com. Thank you for that comment. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the Industrial Development Agency? Seeing none, are there any additions to the agenda today? Anything? No? Okay. We can proceed to business. The first is the Carrowmore Solar LLC application. And, Heather, would you like to introduce this?
Sure. So in your packet, you have a full application package from Carrowmore Solar, and as well as the application, the community benefits memo, and the proposed incentive, as well as a support letter from the Town of Ithaca's supervisor. The docs in the project overall is consistent with the IDA's commercial solar policy. You can see that the pilot savings is really very small. What it does is provide certainty now that the state has their tax assessment calculator, which is new, and provides some certainty. That provides some standard method for valuing these projects, which was lacking for many years. However, that calculator has been held up in the court system for some time now. We don't really know what's going to happen with it. So IDAs all over the state, I think, are continuing to see community solar projects looking for that certainty in terms of tax payment based on a valuation model that, you know, really does value a solar project in terms of declining value. So the proposed pilot amount is $4,200 a megawatt, again, consistent with our policy, with a 2% increase each year over the term of the initial lease with the landowner, which is 25 years. The fee for solar projects is 50% of the regular fee at the IDA, and the policy does require that support from the town, so I did include that in the packet. I'd like to introduce Ryan McCune, who's the Director of Business Development for New York at NexAmp. He happens to also be a City of Ithaca resident, so welcome Ryan if you want to join us at the table, and I think Ryan's going to give a brief overview of the project.
Super, if you don't mind. Mr. Sigler's seat.
And about 6 inches away from the microphone works.
Got it. You got it. I got a pretty loud voice anyway, but for the
And-
people at home, I suppose.
And welcome.
Thank you very much. For those who I haven't met, my name is Ryan McCune, Director of Business Development for NextAmp Solar. So I lead up the business development unit here in New York State, and then also aid in a couple other states as well. As mentioned, I am a city resident. Ironically enough, grew up down the street from this proposed project over on Coy Glen Road, so I'm very familiar with the area. So NextAmp itself has a certain amount of experience here with this IDA board, but maybe not with these members. So I will introduce briefly. We're a Boston-based company, operate nationally in 14 different states. At this juncture, we have 3 different operational projects in Tompkins County, including the Newfield projects over near Tremont, as well as a project in Lansing Renewables, which is also an energy storage project. So this will be our 4th project in Tompkins County, our largest project in Tompkins County. The facility itself is a 5 megawatt AC, 7 megawatt DC community solar facility that will be occupying just under 25 acres, but will have a lease area just under 40 acres and leasing that from the Rancich family partners. Again, as a reminder, this project is going to be on the north side of Mecklenburg Road as you're heading west. So as you kind of head out of town right before you hit the tree line and start getting into the roller coastery bit of Mecklenburg Road, our project will be over there on the right. The project itself, as was mentioned, was approved by the Town of Ithaca Board back in November after a lengthy process going through both a local law revision with them and then also a site plan permitting process with them. So NextAmp itself, as I mentioned, operates over a few assets here in Tompkins County, but we're also the largest operator of community solar assets in New York State. We are a developer, a construction outfit, and an owner-operator, so we're one of the only vertically integrated companies in the state that does everything from organic origination and development straight through to owning and operating facilities. So the perspective there that gives us is that I like to say we're building houses we live in, and we're ultimately dealing with IDAs, local governments, and really having to hold with our promises rather than selling a project and walking away. We have not sold a single solar asset in New York State in our entire time doing business here. We don't intend to start now. So we intend to operate this project long term. As far as this project's financials are concerned, they're obviously well spelled out in the application. Some things that aren't necessarily spelled out in the application, which folks might have some questions about, is that this is contemplated as what's called a VEDER project, meaning it's operating under the community solar tariff, where the utility will actually be purchasing the power from this project, and then the credits from that power do flow back to individual NYSEG business owners and homeowners who can get discounts on their bills. NextAmp operates and owns and operates around 50,000 or 55,000 now community solar accounts throughout the country, 35,000 of which are here in New York State, and many folks, including myself, are hooked up to their individual homes and businesses and getting discounts on their power through a lot of our community solar programs. So our intent is obviously build locally, keep our benefits locally as much as possible, and intend to continue to engage homeowners and businesses locally to bring some of the power benefits of selling that power back to the community as much as we can. So with that, I think Heather covered everything else. I'm open to questions, comments, et cetera, but I appreciate being here and thank you for your time.
Okay. Does anybody have questions? Deborah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, Ryan. Just a couple of things. I wanted to clarify one thing. Heather, you said that they had a 25-year lease. In the documents, it says it's a 40-year lease. Can you clarify?
I believe it's a 25-year with options.
Yeah, 25-year with options for up to 40, correct.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I had was Mr. Wissaker's comment stated that you had a NYSERDA grant, but the documents say NYSERDA funding is pending and has not been awarded at the time of this application. So I assume you don't have that.
We do not have the award letter yet. So NYSERDA is in an interesting situation right now where they're revising their handbook, which are basically the guidelines around how are these benefits going to be allocated? What's the schedule? What's the reporting structure? A big reason for that is that there is a prevailing wage benefit that's now been tied to these NYSERDA grants, and they're figuring out the legislative and enforcement mechanisms for how are we going to make sure people are complying with those prevailing wage benefits. They are holding off on the awards of all of their letters until they release that guidelines. We originally thought that was going to happen sometime around Thanksgiving, but we are, dealing with New York State, so it'll probably be sometime in January where they release those benefits, and letters will come after. If we're lucky. I guess I am saying that on the record. Sorry, New York State. Love you. We are expecting that to be the case. We have reserved a spot in the requisite blocks, so that number that is shown there is, we feel highly confident in that number when the awards will come due, but we just don't have the piece of paper yet.
Okay, and if something somehow slipped through the cracks, would you then make up the difference by borrowing?
Well, it would really come, if there was a drastic difference, so let's say a difference of, more than 5 cents a watt on the project, which would, amount to well over $250,000. I mean, realistically, we'd have to come back and revisit the project and make sure that everything penciled financially. The assumption in that scenario would be yes, we would ultimately have to go back to either our partner financiers or external parties to fill that gap. But I think that before we even got to that portion, we'd have to make sure the project was still financially viable if there was a large decrease in NYSERDA benefit.
Thank you.
Okay. Ann.
Thank you. So it's 39 acres. Okay. And I guess I got a little mixed up. I thought you had said 25. Maybe you meant 25-year lease, or maybe that is what you said.
No, so we're leasing 39 acres.
Leasing 39?
Yep, but just under 25 of that is actually the project.
Okay.
So part of our agreement with Mr. Rancich was any town-imposed setback areas we were going to have to pay for because it was stranded land. There's nothing he could really do with it. The town setbacks are only 75 feet in a lot of cases, so it's not adequate enough for him to plant and run a combine through. And so we agreed that we'd be compensating him for that quote-unquote lost land.
And then, so I don't, pardon me, because I don't know for your other projects, but do you, for your projects for maintenance, for, keeping the vegetation down, some companies use, chemicals, some use, animals, goats or sheep. Do you have, what do you typically use? I know in this area, there's a couple of companies that will provide animals.
Yeah, so both our Lansing and Newfield projects are currently grazed. So whether folks here know it or not, Ithaca is actually the seat of the American Solar Grazing Association.
Right. Right.
Yep, so
And
it's grown a lot since its creation back in 2014, if I remember correctly. As for our intended uses on this project, we prefer to graze wherever possible, but the limitations there are largely driven by herd availability. So there are a fair amount of solar projects in the area. Grazing is preferred by most of the municipalities. It is shown and it is demonstrated in the town of Ithaca law that grazing is their preferred method of ongoing operations and maintenance. And so in our operations and maintenance plan with the town, we did stipulate that that was going to be our intention, and we would let them know if we had to deviate from that for any reason if there's a lack of availability for a shepherd. We are talking about a situation, presumably a year and a half, at least a year from now, where that's going to start being contemplated and those contracts will be contemplated. Mm-hmm. And so our hope is that we're going to be able to get some contract set up with a grazer before then. But I will say there will have to be mechanical mowing of the facility for at least 1 year after operations to make sure the root growth is strong, because if you get the sheep out there prior to that, you've got to keep reseeding and they'll keep eating.
They'll keep pulling it up, yeah. Well, thank you very much for that being your preference, too.
Yeah, it's 100% our preference. We graze, I think, on 35 different facilities across the state at this point right now. So
thank you. And as probably people know, but I just want to say, reduces the amount of fossil fuels, reduces the noise, for neighbors, and reduces the spread of chemicals. So thank you.
Very much enhances soil health. So it's really quite good for soils. I mean, not tilling them and staying those and having meadow growth there is really great for soil health. But then if you add grazers to that, it helps quite a bit.
Free fertilizers.
Fertilizer,
Yeah.
gotta love it.
It's not a bad idea.
We need to control the puns. Todd?
Yeah, thanks for coming in. I know everyone hears me talk about solar projects at times, and hear some of the negative sides of it. NextAmp is a great example of a company that actually sees it through from start to finish and stays with the project. That's very impressive. You usually don't see that in the solar world, and I want to commend you guys for that. And then your use of local labor is talked about by a lot of the contractors, and all the contractors I work with couldn't be happier than working with you guys on your projects. They said you guys got it down pat. They said you guys do a very good job, and I just want to point. They always point out all the negative stuff to some of these projects, but the situation, like, it's just unheard of. Whereas most of the time these solar projects, they're sold numerous times before the job produces any power. And the fact that you go from start to finish and you still own the projects, it's very impressive, and it shows your commitment. So I look forward to this project, and I'd be in favor of this.
Thank you, sir. Very much appreciated.
Okay.
The reason
John?
I work with the outfit, they're a good one.
This site, as I understand it, had previously had a proposal to have some housing built on it. You're leasing a subdivided parcel of the site. I don't know if it's subdivided or just part of the site. Do you know if the housing proposal is compatible with your use, if it could continue to exist in a potential future scenario where that actually comes together?
I have no reason to think that it wouldn't be. To the best of my knowledge, there's nothing in the town code that would preclude that from being the case. So nothing in our permits that would stop them from having any dual use on that parcel.
Thank you.
It's worth noting, though, that the town was really thoughtful when they created their solar overlay district, and they picked parcels that did not have current access to sewer. And so there is an additional parcel directly east of us, also owned by Mr. Rancich, which does have access to some of those utilities, and there's a reason why the town chose the one to the west.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Else, I'll jump in then. I did have a question, or ask you to just speak briefly about the first page project overview, and you reference American-made Helene bifacial solar panels. One is, what are those? And I'd love to hear about the American market or American products. Is that developing?
It is. So I'll start with the panels, answer the first question first. Usually a good way to go. These panels, bifacial panels, are actually partially see-through. So they have receptors on both sides. The benefit for that obviously being they do capture a small amount of refracted light that passed through the panel and they are able to collect that light after it refracts back against the ground. They offer us, a couple percentage points of gain on a facility like this, and they are rapidly becoming kind of the standard for community solar systems because their overall production cost is not drastically higher than a standard panel. As far as our relationship with Helene, in late 2022, we did ink, which I think still stands as the largest community solar manufacturer service agreement with an American-made panel manufacturer for 1.5 gigawatts of solar panels. So NextAmp invested a relatively substantial sum, as you might imagine, in creating 2 new lines of panel manufacturing at the Helene facility, main Helene manufacturing facility in Minnesota. So we were able to announce that publicly in August of this year and have some visits from Secretary Granholm and other folks from the United States government. We are one of a handful of companies who have signed similar service agreements with manufacturers, and a lot of that is because of the benefits around domestic content within the Inflation Reduction Act. So there is capital that is being freed up for these types of investments. It's worth pointing out, even still with these types of investments, an American-made panel represents a 25 to 30% premium over anything else you're going to get on the market. And so it kind of evens itself out. But we ultimately felt that it was in our best interest to secure that pipeline think we all see it's a very tenuous geopolitical situation worldwide right now, and this is a pretty critical supply chain to onshore, in our opinion. So it only makes sense to make those investments with Helene.
And the other equipment you need, like the inverters and all that, are they domestic, or are you still sourcing them where you have to get them?
So the inverters in this case are actually a German company. The inverter company that we have slated for this project is a company SMA. They're a German company, and they do most of their manufacturing in and around Europe. The rule with the domestic content eligibility per IRA right now is that 40% of the manufactured materials need to be domestic. So on any given solar facility, essentially, if you're able to, you can satisfy that with panels and with steel. So we're going to be operating with a domestic racking manufacturer and domestic panels, and hopefully domestic wiring and some other things along those lines. And we will be well over that 40% threshold as designed. But yeah, the inverters are one of the pieces of this facility that we do not have an American manufacturer lined up for.
Anybody else? Well,
I'll move to send the project to public hearing.
okay. Todd seconds. All right. Any further comment on the motion to send it to public hearing? We ready to vote? I'll call the roll. Duck?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yep.
Jeff?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So off to public hearing. And thank you for coming in and speaking with us.
My pleasure. It's nice to have a really short drive for once. So thank you all. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
You do have an electric car, right?
Well, I have 2 legs, so I'm going to go on this one.
Okay. Next item of business is the IAED 2024 Work Plan and 5-Year Strategy presentation. So Heather?
In your packet, you do have copies of IAED's drafted 5-year strategy, as well as our work plan for 2024. I thought I'd give a brief overview and some highlights of both of those documents. I know last month I was here and gave a little bit of an overview of economic development and IAED and how we sort of fit into the landscape. So I see this as a little bit of a continuation of that. And of course, I always want to present what we're up to with our presentation of the memorandum of understanding between the two agencies.
I can interrupt you for a second. I saw Russ was trying to get in.
Oh,
Was he admitted?
Thank you. I see him.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
So our 5-year strategy, several purposes here, really to establish, some written priorities, objectives, and actions for our organization internally over the next 5 years. It helps to establish what we're going to do from one year to the next as sort of a roadmap. We also use our 5-year strategy to guide our investment initiative, where we go out and raise about 1/3 of our funding from investors, businesses that believe in our mission and support the work that we do, because it grows our economy. It's good for everybody. And then we actually drafted this strategy about this time last year. So as we knew we were going into a negotiation with the county around another 5-year commitment to fund a portion of our budget. So several purposes there for putting together a 5-year strategy. A little bit of our process. We've been thinking about this strategy for about 1.5 years now. We started with an investor satisfaction survey. We have about, I want to say, 80 current investors. So we sent out some surveys and asked how we were doing, what they would like to see from us. Got some really good feedback, understood that our investors were happy with the work that we were doing, and definitely thought we were on the right track. We used some of those initial comments, I wanted to say conversations, comments from that investor satisfaction survey to then talk to the board. We did a full board strategy session where we really rolled up our sleeves. Again, about 32 members from different sectors of the economy. And then IAED's team sort of rolled up our sleeves and started putting some words on paper for a new 5-year strategy. We did form an investment initiative committee that also reviewed this strategy, as well as our planning committee and the counties at the time, Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality Committee, that county task force that was set up to review their 5-year investment in IAED also reviewed this strategy. We launched our investment initiative in the spring of this past year, and we've used this strategy as our case statement as we've gone out and asked investors to pledge investment in our organization over the next 5 years. So we've seen a little bit more feedback from potential current and future investors through that process, and we decided it was time to take it back to IAED's board with a couple of minor modifications based on some comment over the past year. They should be approving it, I should say, tomorrow. So for all practical purposes, I'm thinking this is pretty much inked at this point. I did share the draft in your packet. We have a new vision statement that was part of that board strategy session. Ooh, getting ahead of myself. Our vision for our organization is and our economy is a diverse and inclusive economy with innovative businesses, entrepreneurs, and partnerships that foster employment pathways and promote economic prosperity for all. My goal is to memorize that by the end of the year. And with that, we updated sort of our core values and our guiding principles about how we do business in this community, both internally and externally with our team. The 5-year strategy, you do have the whole strategy in your packet, but really we sort of consolidated to 3 pillars, 3 things that we do best: direct services, workforce development, and economic development leadership. We've established some strategic priorities there, along with objectives and then outcomes that we're going to measure every year. So that's sort of a high-level overview of our 5-year strategy. I'd like to talk a little bit about our work plan. We started with that 5-year strategy, looked at our workload, our team, and the work that we do, and you also have in your agenda packet a copy of our drafted work plan, which we did present to the county's Housing and Economic Development Committee last week. Our planning committee has reviewed it at IAED's board level, and IAED's board will likely adopt it at their first meeting in 2024. So just a reminder, at IAED, we really focus on those traded sector industries, higher level industries that tend to create long-term quality job opportunities. Manufacturers' average wages right now starting around $19, $20 an hour, just to give an example, drives the need really once you have those jobs in place and those employers in place, drives the need for a lot of those other local services. So we're a small but mighty team. We focus our efforts on those traded sector industries primarily. In our work plan, staying true to that 5-year strategy, we've identified our 3 pillars or core activities. These are really the areas where we outline the bulk of our work, the things that we do day in and day out. We administer the Tompkins County IDA, for example. We administer a revolving loan fund program and provide technical support to companies as they are referred to us or come through our door. We refer them out for other services. We help companies access services. The workforce development piece really is new for us over the past 1.5 to 2 years, and we're really growing out that programming, making sure that there are quality job opportunities and that career and education pathways are aligned with those opportunities. And then sort of the everything else bucket is that economic development leadership, where we do strategic planning, we get involved in special initiatives and projects that really support a healthy and growing economy. So every year we identify amongst our teams special projects that we're going to work on for the year, things that sort of rise to the level of maybe a one-year or a multi-year project, or something new that we want to provide a little bit more focus on. So here's a list of our identified special projects for this year. You've probably seen Southworks for a couple of years. You know, it is probably the biggest redevelopment opportunity we'll see in this community in many of our lifetimes, most of our lifetimes in the room, I think. Working with them to really identify ways that they can plug some of the gaps in their financing, in their projections, helping to identify how state and other federal funding sources that we can bring to bear on this massive project. We are looking at doing an industrial site analysis. This is something I've been talking about for a couple of years, and a lot of my colleagues have been talking about. The site selectors just say it: if you don't have a site, you're not in the game. We're not even looking at you. So I think we are really primed right now in our community with all of the investment in the 2 federally designated tech hubs in upstate New York. One, the semiconductor hub that was recently announced that runs from Syracuse, Rochester through Buffalo. Ithaca companies are very much a part of that tech hub. And then the second hub for clean energy technology in Binghamton. So trying to work with some of those partners, but realizing that we're not going to be able to leverage federal or state funding for infrastructure investment without really having, you know, some land available that is what New York State calls shovel ready for investment. So that's sort of a big new project for us. I'm not going to go through each one, but you know, I focus on the business services in our shop, in our operation, and so you know, these are some things that I will be taking the lead on. But of course, we're trying to elevate our loan fund and really identify partners, doing a community lending roundtable to talk to some of those referral partners about how we can work together to help to facilitate financing vehicles for different kinds of businesses. On the workforce development side, really expanding and growing our direct to work program, which is our manufacturing training program, and then starting to build out Tompkins Build, which is the construction training program, both a non-union and a pre-apprenticeship union track. We had a really great meeting with the Building Trades Council last week. So conversations are already starting to happen around there, and then really continuing to participate in that Future Ready Workforce Innovation Consortium, which has been facilitated by Center State CEO in Syracuse, really to ensure career readiness and programming and training for the semiconductor industry throughout the region. On the leadership side, we will be undertaking an update of the countywide economic development strategy. I think this is the 4th one we've done for Tompkins County. We will be participating in both of those tech hub sector partnerships that I mentioned before. Our broadband project is going to break ground next year. Hold me to it, please. And we'll be wrapping up our investment initiative. Our goal this year was to raise pledges from investors to the tune of about $2.1 million. Right now, we're about 76% of our goal. That's really interesting. Okay. And with all of our goals, all of our work plan, our 5-year strategy, and our annual work plans, we identify outcomes that we're gonna try and hold ourselves accountable for. And so you'll see their direct services. We always talk about these goals. Most of these goals are met through the IDA, but through some of our other services as well. The workforce development, our new goals, now that we've added workforce to our suite of services that we're providing, and we've added community benefits really after conversations in some of the places we've been with our 5-year strategy, and most of those community benefits do come from the projects we work with at the IDA. And that's our 5-year strategy and our work plan. There's our small but mighty team that's going to grow to another staff person next year.
Okay.
I would be happy to take any comments or questions.
Yes, anybody? I am curious, there was a question on privilege of the floor about 37 affordable sites. Where, do you have a specific location where those are going to be, or is that a generic?
So our goals really are based on what we've seen in terms of past development, what we see on the docket for the future, taking into account the economy. Over time at the IDA, the incentives that have been provided for housing, about a quarter of those are for directly for affordable units. So I think our numbers were based on about a quarter of the units being affordable.
They weren't cited anywhere yet?
No.
Okay. John?
And those numbers are specifically referencing projects that would be approved during 2024, not, I mean, because we have many more than that many units approved and not yet broken ground, right? So.
Yes, yes.
Deborah?
I just have a question, because I'm not very conversant in how IAED itself functions outside of the IDA. When you provide technical support services and other support services to businesses, is that free? I mean, do they pay for that? Is that paid for by the investments they pledge?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the investors themselves do not get a direct benefit from IAED. They sort of, invest in our mission. We do work with manufacturers, high-tech companies. We will provide them technical assistance free of charge. There are fees, of course, at the IDA. If they submit a loan application and we approve a loan, there's a fee for a loan. But all of the intake and referral and assisting businesses to access state incentive programs, a lot of times helping them with their applications. We know what to say. How does this fit within the regional strategic plan, kinds of things like that. We do not charge a fee for.
So it's like a government service almost?
It is.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So, the 40 hours of my time this year that I spent with Menlo Micro, that's part of the work that we do.
Thank you.
Jeff, as a member of IAED, do you have anything to add to this? Any thoughts?
I think in the past, Heather has highlighted some of the achievements that have happened. Obviously, this was more forward-looking. So I would say that what she highlighted for 2024 is really what the board has requested, and over the years, Heather's really been driving this. I think some of the things that sometimes you don't talk enough about is your workforce development and what Danny's been doing, and really driving that. To me, that's kind of that. You've had a lot of achievements. That is really driving something that we've needed for a while here, and I think you're just taking that to the next level with now getting into the construction trade and stuff. So I would certainly highlight that as, to this board, some of the things that have been happening.
Yeah. Anybody else? Todd?
Yeah, kind of like what Jeff just said too. The presentation Danny just did and Kurt helped with was very impressive. What she did with the trades, everybody's very excited about working with her. So, and the way she comes across, just she's. I look forward to working more with her on this stuff. She's very excited about it, and what she did in Syracuse is impressive. So I think we have good things coming with her.
Well, thank you. I'm certainly impressed with her background and her ability to work with partners and to bring in more partners. You know, we're really trying to change the way that a lot of the partners in this community think about career readiness and workforce training so that we're all working together. And I think that with all that brain trust together, that we'll be able to accomplish great things. And those great things are going to be finding unemployed, underemployed people, making sure that they have all the wraparound and support services that they need, offering relevant training programs that put them directly in front of employers and into entry-level jobs that provide for long-term career opportunities.
Deborah.
Yeah, since you brought that up, Jeff, as a person who served on PDAC and PEAK and nagged Heather for years about workforce development, we're very pleased to see what Danny's brought to the table. And another piece of this that I'm impressed with is that Danny and Chris Spahn, our new workforce development person, seem to be working really, really well together, and I appreciate that, so thank you.
Our doors are always open. You're welcome to come by and say hello. It's a really friendly environment, and I think that's really helped us as we moved into this new space a little over a year ago to collaborate and work together more.
I guess I jump in to just say that I think the workforce development angle is important, and there have been a lot of discussions about the interaction between career pathways and what's here. You know, Career Pathways has the Human Services Coalition agencies that are trying to collaborate and work together on this. And I think there's some real opportunity. Hopefully that'll get realized in 2024. So, yeah. All right, anything else? Good, let's keep going. Next item is the Memorandum of Understanding, the Tompkins County Area Development, Inc., DBA Ithaca Area Economic Development, and Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency. It's on page 36 of the packet. This is the agreement between the IDA and IAED, lots of initials. Deborah.
So I'm new to this, and I had a question. The IDA pays IAED for the services that it provides. So where does IDA's money come from?
Projects?
Fees for projects.
Okay, so the fees don't go directly to IAED. They go to the IDA first, and then we give them back to you.
You contract for services. We provide economic development services.
Yeah, I just wondered how the money flowed, so thank you.
On roughly a quarterly basis, Tompkins County Finance contacts me and I sign a rather large check on a quarterly basis, just so you know.
Lucky you.
Well, if only. I see it and it goes away, but that's the conduit. So we use, the finance department as our banker and accountant, and they prepare the payment from IDA to IAED. Yeah.
I think we've had some conversation in the past about this, and I personally, there was an extensive process at the county this last year to consider what the memorandum of understanding between IAED and the county looks like, that several of my colleagues here participated in, as well as other members of the legislature and other stakeholders in the community. And I personally think that we should have a similar process here to discuss, this agreement, the amount of the payment, and what the relationship looks like. I think that it's as long as I've been on this body, this particular memorandum of understanding, which represents a $500,000 annual contract, has essentially come up as an agenda item for approval without any real discussion or consideration. And I think that that's not really in keeping with our duty of loyalty to the IDA as board members. This is it's essentially prepared by the recipient of these funds every year. And I personally would like to see us table this and actually have perhaps like a subcommittee meeting or something to just go over it. Even if we approve it exactly as written, I feel like it's important for us to consider it in some thorough detail.
Hey, 1 second, Ann. I just say that the substance of this has been worked over year on year, but I take your point. We have 18 days left, I think, in 2023, so we would be up against it if we wanted a contract in place on January 1st.
When does that first payment go out? I mean, if we approved it at our January meeting, presumably we could still make the first quarterly payment in March or whatever.
I think there's one at the beginning of the year, but I don't know that. I haven't signed a check in a while. Ann and then Deborah.
Yeah, I second what John said. You know, some of us just filled out our, reviews of, the performance that we all have in our relationships with the boards. And so some of those questions were being able to, ask for something to be tabled, to really have time to look into it and to have feedback. Do we feel we have feedback? And so I think this is very appropriate that we look into this rather than vote on it.
Okay, Deborah?
I appreciate where John and Annie are coming from. On the other hand, I suspect that this is pretty much a format that's been developed over a period of years. And if we're going to be reviewing this, I think we should have, we knew this was coming, or we should have. We should have let IAED know before the 11th hour that we wanted some time to review it. I'm not really comfortable with holding it up this year. If it's our intention as board to negotiate the terms of this agreement at some point, we should plan on doing that next year. I just don't think it's good practice to wait until the last minute and then decide to change the rules.
John?
This is not the first time I've brought this up, and I will point out that, if the passage of this is critical in this particular meeting, our board agenda is administered by IAED. It might have been wise for IAED to place this item on our board agenda prior to the only moment it could be approved. That right there is, that's not really appropriate for how you manage a board's agenda. It's a big contract, it's a big decision. We talked about our budget, I don't remember, I think it was 2 meetings ago in October, because I was absent at the last meeting, and I mentioned that we should have this review prior to approving this MOU, and here this is for the first time on our agenda 18 days before the end of the year. That's, this isn't the 11th hour, it was 3 months before the end of the year when it was originally mentioned this year. And I've mentioned it in previous years. So just a little context around that.
I guess I'll jump in. If you look at the bullet points, they're really administrative. It's maintaining a website, it's doing agendas, it's the functional aspects of running the IDA. I would be very reluctant to hit January 1st without an answer to how are we going to operate in 2024. With that said, John, I agree with you. I think it's healthy to do a good review of this. And if this should have been reviewed, we probably should have spoken up some time ago. I'll take blame on that if that was something that the IDA thought should have been pushed earlier this year. I didn't really get that, but I believe this would be totally appropriate for one of the subcommittees to take on in 2024. This is a yearly contract, and we could dig into it and see if we really had support for change. But I'm reluctant to do it today. I think we should keep our ship sailing and manage from there. Deborah.
Yeah, I guess my first question would be, what is it that we would want to change? Would we be looking to change what services IAED provides, or are you concerned about what we're paying for those services?
I mean, I think it's our fiduciary duty as board members of this organization to review a $500,000 contract in detail. This is like the lion's share of our budget is this specifically. And I don't know what that review would bring up, but I mean, we had extensive conversations at the series of meetings that you were at the county about all sorts of issues, and some changes were made to the county's MOU. Going into that process, I could not have predicted any of those things. I mean, I didn't specifically know what issues would come up, and it feels important to me that we review it and look at it and honestly have an open conversation about what's in it, and what maybe there are things missing if it's simply pro forma administrative tasks. I mean, it seems clear to me that the administration of the IDA is not a $500,000 endeavor, that what we're actually doing is paying some amount of money, a lot less than that, for the administration of the IDA, and then also making an investment in IAED because we believe in IAED's mission, the same reason the county does and the same reason the investors do. There's this breakdown of it used to be a third, and then, there was a whole conversation about the county at, what the county's investment level would be over the next 3 years. We should have a similar conversation here. It feels.
Yeah, I'm just not sure that I think that's apples and oranges. I mean, from my perspective, we were trying to define what the economic development piece of the county's interests would look like and how that would be defined. In this case between the IDA and IAED, basically, the only thing we do here is set policy and make decisions. And everything else gets done at IAED. So I'm just having difficulty understanding how we would even function without IAED and what it's worth to us to function.
Well, if I can just try to put a clarifying question out there, it does seem like I'm not hearing anybody say we shouldn't look at this, that it's fine, but I think it's a question of should we look at it immediately?
Or next.
Or should we do it within the 2024 year? Ann?
Yeah, as Rich said, I'm not saying, we don't want IAED doing that work, but, just to have this at the last minute, having some more time to look at it, or having a subgroup, because it's not my area of expertise, but having a subgroup, to look at this. And I don't know if that's an answer that we could get today. I don't know if it is. Like, can someone make a call? If this is our last meeting, do we need to do this today, or can we do it in our January meeting? Is that too late? And that would maybe give at least a group one time or one or two times to meet, to look at it, because we are contracting with IAED to do this work. So, and it has been brought up before about wanting to do this, and this was, this is our responsibility to contract with IAED. So
it sounds like you're saying do it now, do the review now, or are you saying we could do it in '24?
I would like to see, do we need to approve this today? Because if not, I would like to not approve it today and see if we have to approve it, say, by January to make sure payments go through. Do we have that 30 days or so? Do we have a month? If we do, if we needed to do that, even you could have a subcommittee meet like twice. That's enough time, and that's probably enough time to review it.
Absolutely. I feel like it's a meeting or two is probably plenty. And I feel like the fact is, like, I asked for this in October. So, I mean, it's unfortunate we're a little flat-footed, but that it doesn't feel like it's appropriate to bring us something that must pass at our last meeting of the year without any review. So,
Heather, can I ask, are there any changes in this agreement from what we had last year?
I made some minor edits and cleaned some things up. I mean, basically the IDA administrative services are what we do for the IDA. There's sort of a blanket statement about providing economic development services for Tompkins County. I mean, there were no really major changes.
But I mean, we don't have a record of what those changes are, so now we're also reviewing a document that has some changes that are
I would say
unspecified.
there isn't anything substantive. I think when I reviewed the MOUs, the TCDC one says that we'll provide community benefit memos for the TCDC, and we historically have never done that. We do that at the IDA
But, I
kind
mean,
of thing.
Still appropriate for our review would be to have a red line of this document from last year and also some, indication of what last year's payment was and what this year's payment is, how that's calculated. I mean, the sorts of things you would review when you were reviewing a contract.
And I'm happy to provide that information. I know the agenda packets went out a week ago, so if you wanted to see some of that, if anyone would have asked, I would have gladly prepared it. I'm happy to provide some of that.
Ina, do you know, is there a payment due before end of year or at the beginning of the year?
There are no more payments for 2023 due, so all 4 quarters for 2023 have been received. So this would be moving forward into 2024.
Would there be one at the beginning of the quarter then? I'm trying to remember.
Usually, yes. We do submit earlier in the quarter, but there's no legal, it has to be on a specific date. But,
Okay.
So if we
Well,
could commit to completing this work in time for the January meeting, I guess I'd be okay with that.
I'd like to hear from everybody else who hasn't spoken yet. Todd, Jeff, and Duck, what are you guys thinking?
Again, I'd love to see it as a normal practice, and like John brought up, well thought, was it would be nice to. I personally like to have a chance to review something and see it for so I can really think about it before I put my name to it. So I don't see a problem with it, and as long as we get enough time to still be able to get the check, the money taken care of in January, I feel comfortable waiting until January. It doesn't sound like it's going to hold anything up, but at least we get the.
Okay, Jeff?
So I was actually just checking with Stephen whether I have a conflict on this because I'm on the IAED board. Stephen felt like I didn't, correct?
Yeah, I mean, again, Jeff confirmed that there is no monetary or any benefit as serving on the board of IAED, so technically there is no interest here. So I think you're good on that front.
So given that, I would not be opposed for us to hold off on this and then vote on it in January.
Hey, Duck?
I think I largely agree with Deborah with regard to it being a perfunctory motion, but that said, since we do have the time, I'd be in favor of, for my own education too, giving it another pass.
Okay. What's the appetite of the members for a special meeting? The lawyer in me is saying, I don't like legal vacuums. I think, was it Cardozo who said the law abhors a vacuum? But
And so do lawyers.
yeah, I'd like to see us be comfortable with this and do it before end of year, if we could. Maybe that's impractical given the holiday season. But if we could, what's the sense of the IDA on that? Ann?
I think first maybe see who might be willing and able to be on it and ask those folks if they think they can have a meeting or two.
You're talking about, though, perhaps a special meeting of the entire, a committee of the whole, as it were?
It sounds like everybody wants to be comfortable with this. We could do it in a subcommittee or a committee, but we'd need to bring everybody together to vote anyway. So I'm thinking special meeting, we get more information.
New Year's Eve, champagne,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Late in the day, yeah?
But I'd rather wait till that group met, not just we get information. I'd want to form some small group to look at it. And so just have enough time for them to meet. It might not take long, like we had an update on the labor
Okay.
policy. I think we met once to update that. This is something that's already written up, and we have a history with it, so could be just,
I would assume this would go to the executive committee.
Whatever your pleasure is, Rich.
And remind me, who is on the executive committee at present? Sorry to put you on the spot.
That would be you, and Jeff as vice chair, John as secretary treasurer.
Would the committee, or would the IDA be comfortable with the executive committee doing a review and bringing this back for a vote if we can schedule it before year end?
In my mind, we should make sure that we extend the invitation to the rest of the board to attend at that meeting.
That's
and
fine.
Make sure they know when it is, and then, yeah, let's do it.
I mean,
to
our
exec.
practice is, the committees are open to any IDA member who wants to
And it
attend.
would certainly make the scheduling simpler if only 3 of us are required to actually have a meeting, but then everybody else can come if they feel so inclined and interested.
Okay, so proceed on that
Hey,
basis.
I'm sorry if I may, this is Russ. Can you guys see me? Sorry, I'm not there physically. John, if we're going to have a committee meeting that's going to be a quorum, we have to go through the notice processes that are required under the general municipal law, just so you know.
So we need a week, right?
for each of those
Yes.
meetings, yeah, to notice those.
With 18 days left in the year, we're up against it. I guess if we can't actually take the vote in 2023, that's unfortunate, but if we could get the committee to review and say, yeah, we're okay with this, or here's the recommended changes so we all know, that would at least be progress. I'd ask Jeff and John if after the meeting we could just compare calendars. Let's see if we can do something in next week and go from there. See if we can get something back to the whole IDA before year end, but if not, yeah.
So would that be not a special IDA meeting then?
We'd have to schedule a special IDA meeting, yes, if we were going to vote on it.
So we'd probably want to get that date before we leave today if we're going to have any chance of quorum.
I know you're going no.
No, I'm just looking at the year end. Do whatever you want, don't look at me.
Because Ina won't be there.
Can I clarify, Russ, if there's a subcommittee established and a subcommittee announces a meeting, I believe you would have to correct me if I'm wrong, that GML says you have to publicly notice a meeting in reasonable time. So if you had a subcommittee meeting and there were 3 members and 2 more members showed up because they were interested in the discussion, we would have met our announcement requirement, correct? Or does it's not a certain number of days?
There's no bright line rule. Committee meetings are subject to the public officers and open meetings law. So if other board members that were not on this committee wanted to attend, that's fine. It's just there's no bright line rule whether or not that constitutes a meeting of the IDA, the full board.
And then if the full IDA met the second week in January at their regular meeting, would that meet your timeline if that?
Yeah, I was hoping to get a vote in '23, but I guess if we know where we're heading and we're comfortable with it, I guess I'm okay with doing it at our first meeting of the year, but yeah, there we are.
And assuming that IAED has the cash balance to carry themselves until the second week in January, it seems like I can't imagine this thing not passing, but still.
Okay, we'll go forward on that basis. Next item of business is the annual board self-evaluation. Those have been handed out, I believe.
Yeah, so you got an email with this, and I handed it out to most folks. It's the self-evaluation. If you could just fill it out and return it to me, either hand it to me today or email it to me. It's confidential. I compile the results, and I send it to the ABO by the end of January. So just hoping to get a jump on that, because who knows in January?
So we all know that January is Be Kind to Ina month because she's doing all the IDA reporting. So I'm just going to ask that if you don't give it to her today, please don't have her have to come after you. She's got enough on her plate, so make yourself a note, make sure that Ina gets her board self-evaluation.
And I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, next item is Chair's report. And I only just had a little bit of information I wanted to share with everybody. You saw that Heather and I had exchanged some emails on the Southworks project, and I've, at the risk of repeating myself, this is a really big project that will be the largest decision, that probably any of us will make on the IDA. So I wanted to proceed with real caution on this, and it is not our job on the IDA to structure the agreement, what it looks like, but it almost certainly will look really different than our standard policies. And that's where I've been concerned that we all have a pretty good understanding of it. And what's come out of the discussion is the idea of setting up a subcommittee, temporary subcommittee for this project with some outside people and perhaps 2 IDA members to really look at the structure and make sure that we're providing information back to the IDA so that we're all educated. On this vote, I would really like us to have unanimity or very close to it. And that's going to be hard, but it's such an important decision. I don't want it on a 4-3 vote. And to get there, I want to make sure we are all very comfortable that we at least understand it. Even if you disagree, I want everybody to know this is the project. And this is why it's different from the other projects we've done. So anyway, that's, I think, the pathway we're going to start down. I wanted to just explain that to anybody. Anybody have thoughts on that? Does that make sense? I'm seeing a nods. Okay. All right. That's my chair's report. John.
Were we going to have an executive session today to follow up on our conversation from last meeting?
We can if...
that feels important to me. I mean,
if there's a motion for it.
Good.
If somebody wishes to make a motion, we can have an executive session.
Should we do that after we have concluded all of our regular business?
Yes.
So I would move that we have that session after we conclude our regular business. But do you want me to move it then?
Yeah, let's do it then.
To add it to the agenda, or?
Well, we can do it now. You need to state the reason.
I mean, to discuss a contract negotiation, I believe is the.
Okay. Okay. Do I get a second on that motion? And seconds? All those in favor of adding an executive session to the agenda? Okay, that's unanimous. All right, moving on, staff report.
Okay, I know some of you attended the Market View Apartments ribbon cutting last week. Ann was there, Rich was there, Mike Sigler and Martha Robertson were there. Am I forgetting anybody?
Travis Brooks.
Oh, yeah,
was there.
Travis Brooks was there, Mayor Laura Lewis was there, Rob Cantelmo was there. It was really a feel-good meeting, a feel-good presentation, I think, to see the state come down and really recognize the work that's being done in this community to support affordable housing. The IDA did deliver an incentive. It was Cayuga Park at the time, but now they're called Market View. Really nice project, I think, that all of you as a board can really stand behind and be proud of helping to be a piece of making that project a reality. Lenny Skrill called me. He's from DHCR, the first time they submitted their tax credit application, and he said, I can't approve this. It's an environmental justice issue. It's next to a railroad track. So I sent him the Sotheby's listings for houses just down the road next to the railroad track. And I said, well, you know, you've got an Aldi's across the street, you've got a farmer's market, you've got a bus stop. This is not an environmental justice issue. This is a new neighborhood and a new community that we're trying to build right next to our waterfront. And I had some help from Nels Bone and some others in the county planning department. We all made the arguments, and I'm so glad that they decided to approve the tax credit the second time they applied for it. But in any case, it was really, you know, we don't get that opportunity a lot to go out and see the good work that's being done in the community.
I would add that in the speakers, there were several people who got up, but the one that really hit home was the woman who lives there, who just said thank you over and over again, saying, now I have a home. It was really powerful, I thought. It was very nice.
I did have the pleasure of being asked to present to the Chamber of Commerce's Housing Task Force on IDA incentives to support housing. So I did that yesterday. I think we got some good feedback. Someone from County Planning was there and talked about the housing needs assessment. Someone from the Board of Realtors talked about the market. And then Scott Whittam wrapped us up from Whittam Planning, sort of talking about the approval process to get us all out sort of on the same page. The Chamber has proposed a 3 to 5 year discussion, a series of discussions amongst this group to make some recommendations and really help to advocate for more housing, workforce housing in this community. And then I just wanted to thank Ina for all of her work and getting out all of the project reports. We have over 50 active projects at the IDA, so all those went out a couple of weeks ago, and we'll be slowly trickling in. Our reporting deadline for the Authorities Budget Office and the online reporting is March 31st. So be kind to Ina quarter. And that's all I have today.
Dan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, after going to the Market View Apartments grand opening and seeing that, I talked to a couple of the residents out down the hall and afterwards, and seeing that's one of the projects that was the income qualification is 30 to 60%, I believe, AMI. And so that's especially needed in the community. So, and they said the apartments were filled up just pretty much immediately, and they have a long waiting list. And I believe we had, I think I was on the IDA or maybe just listening in, but I remember back when they came and really wanting to have the affordable housing first before the market rate, and that and to me that seemed really important. And then going there and seeing it, and today I took a walk along the waterfront and the railroad tracks and down around that area, and just really seeing where those folks are going to be able to live or are living close to the trails, shopping, DMV, the farmers market, Green Star, Aldi's, and accessible across the street to the rest of Ithaca. And of course, you know, the great, the inlet and the lake. And just wanted to mention, and maybe it was said way back when we were looking at that project, but that was all industrial, that part. And because some people, when they come to Ithaca, they say, well, why don't you have a whole bunch of great housing along the water? And the history in that area is it was industry. Back then, they needed the water for industry, so industry was all along that area, and there was very low income housing, just pretty much shacks and things like that, very poorly built housing, and not environmentally friendly housing because they were right next to the industry, the workers. So to see a little bit of that come full circle, to see those people there, people that have lower incomes right now, to be able to be there, to me was really moving. So I just don't want to forget that piece of history.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? John.
A number of projects that we approved this year, perhaps we're planning on making payments to the Community Housing Development Fund. Can we get an update on sort of which ones closed and actually made their payments and which are still pending, et cetera?
The Dean, which is 401 East State Street, closed and the payment was made. Nobody else has closed on their pilot yet.
Is that something that we could maybe have just like I assume you've got like the big list of all your projects and what their status is.
I do, yeah.
Could that just like come to us in our agenda packets or something, just to like see that?
I've got
I feel like I've got this question every time.
I've got a spreadsheet that shows all the housing projects and what their payment is and when it's going to be made and what status is. Yeah, I can certainly provide that periodically.
We have some projects that are kind of sitting, waiting for interest rates to stabilize. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got a number of projects that, just financially are sort of on hold. I haven't had anyone say, oh, we're pulling the plug, we're not doing it. But I've had a lot of conversations about, we're just waiting to see if interest rates stabilize or start to come down. When lenders start to be more receptive to large projects and financing, I think we'll see some things go.
God.
I just hope, I know we get the big need for affordable housing. I just hope we pay attention to who's managing these projects afterwards, because I just sent Rich a picture of a picture I took this morning at the art house or Theus, whatever they call it. I mean, it's disgusting. It's just the garbage cans overflowing. It's out on the sidewalk. It's out on the road. I mean, it's a disaster, that place. And it just, when I hear Ann talking about walking around Marketplace, and like I said, I just hope, from everything that happened with that project, I hope it's going to be maintained better. Sounds like it will. But when I look at that art house or our Theus project, it's just terrible. No, I mean,
Can't even empty the dumpsters.
I come in the morning, when I leave at night, late at night, I mean, there's police cars to ambulances to you name it. It's all over there all the time. And I just, I don't know how the people feel safe walking in and out of there at night myself. But it's, I don't know what Vecino's doing, if they're managing it themselves, if they get someone else managing the project, but it's just terrible. It's just, it's an eyesore, really, when you look at it. But
I was trying to open up the picture you sent, but it hasn't opened. But if it's a picture of garbage, I can just make a mental image. Oh, yeah, Deborah.
Rich is looking across the street at it.
Well, on a brighter note, circling back to the conversation you had about projects waiting for interest rates to become steady, Barron's reported that the FOMC met today. They kept interest rates unchanged at the conclusion of today's policy meeting, keeps the target range for Fed funds at 5.25 to 5.5%. Officials see the central bank keeping monetary policy tighter next year than Wall Street had expected. However, they are suggesting that they may do 2 or 3 rate cuts next year, so that's good news.
Okay. Duck.
Yeah, along those lines too, I think it's okay to mention since Brian Crandall reported on it on Twitter, but the Breeze, the Ithaca Gun Project, Vislam's Ithaca Gun Project secured financing. Seems like that's moving forward, so more good news.
Great.
Let's try to end on a bright note.
Okay. All right. Moving on, we have minutes from November 8th, 2023. Could I get a motion on those? Deborah moves, Todd seconds. Questions or comments on the minutes? Do that by a raised hand vote. All those in favor? Anybody opposed?
I'm abstaining. I wasn't here. I guess I can vote to it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Not. I have to check our bylaws on if you can abstain in those circumstances, but that's fine. We'll call it. You'll call it unanimous. Okay.
It looked good from the perspective of someone who wasn't here.
Yeah, they always do, don't they? We didn't put anything in that you said, right?
I sure didn't.
But we did volunteer you for something.
I appreciate being noted as excused rather than absent, so in that case, I'll go ahead and vote for it. So,
There.
I did tell you I wasn't coming.
Okay, and then
Heard you were on your way.
we had a motion for executive session to discuss.
Do we want to do the TCDC minutes? It's the only actual business we need to do in TCDC before we could do our
You have
executive
to
session.
approve the MOU.
Well, but if I would lump that into the other MOU. They're the same, they're almost the same document. If we're going to meet to discuss them, we really should just do them both.
I do not have an agenda for the Development Corporation.
All that's on it's the minutes and the MOU.
All right, well, I would need to call this to order, and I will do this.
We have to
Well, we have to adjourn this one and then come back.
and then come back to go to sorry.
All right, let's recess the IDA meeting.
Tricky move.
Yeah, there we go.
Good one, good one.
All right, motion to recess? All in favor, good, okay.
Unanimous second?
Unanimous second, there. And in the meantime, let me call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Development Corporation for Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. And I would move forward to item number 4, business. And this is the TCDC/IAED 2024 Memorandum of Understanding shown on page 2 of the packet. And I assume we would like to treat this in the same way as the IDA-IAED agreement. And we would refer this to the executive committee, the same executive committee for consideration. Yeah, can we get a motion to do that? Todd moves, John seconds. I'll call the roll on that. Doug?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
All right, and the chair is yes. So we'll proceed on that basis. And while we're here, let's approve minutes for October 11th, 2023. Todd moves, John seconds. Questions or comments on the minutes? We'll do that by a raised hand vote. All those in favor? All right, that's unanimous. And without objection, I would move to adjourn the meeting of the Development Corporation.
I'm voting to adjourn.
Okay. All those in favor?
Sorry.
The meaning of the
It's a little
raised hand. Okay, we are adjourned, and I would ask that we move out of recess of the IDA meeting. We are back in session there. Then I believe we have an order to go into executive session. So we should, and we already voted on that. So we're ready to go. I would just advise the public that I do not anticipate taking any action after we come out of executive session. And we'll take a brief recess to shut down the systems.
Heather, Ina, happy holidays.